Television series are one of the most successful and widespread cultural products. This makes the question of its cognitive impact particularly interesting and encourages its study. Serials are temporally prolonged narratives, and this implies that their potential impact refers to millions of people for months or the years they may last. Narration is a communicative modality with a wealth of resources, the most powerful of which are aimed at eliciting emotional responses that interact with cognition. However, skeptical positions are well known. Philosophy, for example, has raised doubts about the epistemic quality of the arguments conveyed by fiction. However, different branches of psychology confirm the persuasive capacity of narrative since decades. We do not need to mention the main authors in this line, but we refer to recent works that present a review of the advances made so far on the theories of narrative persuasion. A meta-analysis may be also of interest. In fact, we all know that the persuasiveness of narratives is not related to their epistemological quality. Unfortunately, many politicians benefit from this state of affairs. Fortunately, the concern for the artistic dimension of serials is often related to a narrative content that is considered cognitively valuable by viewers. We are going to offer you the results of a survey conducted in the USA 2 months ago, in which we have explored how viewers perceive the relationship between the cognitive value of serial fictions and the artistic qualities they offer. The aim of our project has a foundation in aesthetic theory. We are interested in specifying how the aesthetic properties of a work of art contribute to its cognitive value. One of our main inspirations are some contributions on the relationship between imagination and knowledge. I will briefly point out two distinct but overlapping perspectives in one key respect. First, Martha Nussbaum's defense of novels as paradigm of moral activity, which is very interesting for us because she establishes an analogy between moral imagination and creative imagination. She described very accurately how a literary image written by Henry James in his novel The Golden Bowl can attain a moral quality completely dependent on its artistic qualities. According to Nussbaum, the artistic imagination with which the author elaborates the commented passage is what leads him to express a complex reality with richness and lucidity. Angela Breitenbach, from the field of science theory, also states that the imagination is similar in two very different domains, in this case, aesthetic experience and scientific research. The analogy takes place between an aesthetic experience based on a set of activities of the imagination, referring to a dance piece, Vollmond, by Pina Bausch, and a key moment in the development of quantum mechanics, when Werner Heisenberg tells how he conceived one of his theories during a sleepless night. Breitenbach argues that both artworks and theories strike us as beautiful when they force a range of imaginative activities on us, and that the same kinds of imaginative activity also contribute to achievements of understanding. Accordingly, she proposes that the result of this homogeneous vision of the processes of imagination converts the aesthetic experience in science and the cognitive value of art into two facts with the same root, and that would explain both the cognitive value of art and the aesthetic value in science. Both Nussbaum and Breitenbach propose an interaction between artistic qualities and knowledge. It is the imagination that seems to be the main mechanism driving this interaction. In many cases, these processes are due to an artistic creative act that provokes an emotion or diverse emotions on spectators. On the one hand, there are specific emotions of art, such as wonder. From our project, we think and propose, both to psychologists and neuroscientists, that it is very interesting to better understand the relationship between the specifically aesthetic emotions provoked by a work of art and the perception, understanding, and memorization of the content resulting from the main act of cognition offered by it. There are already some studies that approach aspects of this and are a good stimulus to continue on this path. In our research project, as preliminary steps to the results presented here, we have addressed two aspects we hope we can introduce into the triangulation game or model proposed by Murray Smith in his last book. Firstly, we have studied and identified a phenomenon that we believe is of great interest for a scientific study: the climatic moments of serial fiction. The climax is a point where the aesthetic experience often involves a kind of cocktail of artifact emotions and narrative cognitive progress. These are localized moments, and in them there is a strategic interaction between emotions and knowledge, one of the most relevant that any narrative has. Secondly, we have tested a concept from the field of the psychology of narrative absorption. Monique Kuipers et al. Have proposed a new modality which they call artifact absorption, referring to an experience focused by the formal qualities that grant a singularity to the aesthetic experience of the narrative. We approached the analysis of a number of scenes of the Spanish serial fiction La Peste, well known for the visual fineness and pictorial inspiration of its images. In many cases, such pictures aim to create in the viewer a sort of forensic fandom with an aesthetic scope, where the viewer, for example, investigates the relationship of those images with other pictorial works. The appreciation and evaluation of these careful visual compositions also leads to learning about the aesthetics of lighting, composition, and mise en image. In fact, the series has also produced a set of making-of, referring to the visual elaboration and artistic background of diverse scenes. Possibly, artifact absorption presents cognitive benefits similar to narrative absorption, whose positive influence in persuasive terms has been empirically tested with favorable results. Therefore, if there is any cognitive benefit a work of art can have, in many cases this benefit must be a knowledge of the artistic properties of the work. We would like to emphasize that our vision of the cognitive import of a television series includes such interesting areas as ethics and morality, but it is not restricted to them. Serials can broaden our geographical knowledge by showing us places in detail. Perhaps the most notorious case is the Baltimore to which The Wire took us. The static emotion produced by the images of the cities and other locations in serialized TV probably is related to our learning about those locations and can stimulate our curiosity, even our desire to know these places better by visiting them. In Spain, for example, it is well known the case of the Canary Islands, which offer very favorable financial conditions for the filming of TV series, looking for the return in more visitors. The Spanish serial Hierro, which takes the name of a small island of the Canary archipelago, can be considered a good example of the results of the tourism policy of this island. There, landscape images are used systematically in a narratively structured way. For example, many central events are located through the use of fascinating aerial shots. This is an example occurring in one of the central events in the last episode of the second season. Another domain that the TV series undoubtedly addresses is that of historical knowledge. This is not a trivial topic due to the amount of historical serials where the viewers wonder and engage perception of the scenery, costumes, and settings possibly contributes to a better cognition of the storylines that claim to revive historical events. To conclude this introduction, I would like to refer to a central aspect, the role of narrative absorption. The processes of narrative absorption in serial fiction, as in cinema, are related to the presence of the three main narrative emotions: suspense, curiosity, and surprise. But unlike in cinema, these three narrative emotions are subject to a prolonged temporality. The prolongation of emotions such as suspense, curiosity, or, for example, certain moods, the temporally extended relationship of the spectator with the characters, and the emotional bonds born in them, which, as we all know, have provoked a long and very rich debate within cognitivism, are characteristic of TV series. Although we agree with Ted Nanicelli's warning that there is no necessary linkage between artistic achievements and temporal prolongation, we will argue that often scriptwriters have used the amount of time at their disposal to create very specific artistic strategies that would have been impossible in shorter stories. Suspense can effectively direct the viewer's attention to content likely to become a source of cognitive value. When the scriptwriters choose an original orchestration of suspense, making it an artistically valuable factor, this will probably have a cognitive effect. This could be the case, for example, in the serial Your Honor. The viewer will follow a meticulously planned path of suspense, which, as a side effect, makes the knowledge of the circumstances that may accompany a moral dilemma the focus of attention. Indeed, the series seems geared to provide an answer to the question posed by this promotional poster. The same happens with curiosity. Any artistic effect can contribute to the viewer's interest in a question raised by the work. It is very interesting to observe the systematic character that certain narrative aesthetic effects can have in serials, being distributed throughout episodes of one or several seasons. We briefly show you a set of animated transitions from the serial Undone.
I was in a fucking coma! Are we outside?
I don't think so.
Anything? Remember anything about what? Okay, you know what, Alma? I am sick of this, and I'm sorry.
Oh, that's my.
In this case, we hypothesize that there may be a clear interaction between the aesthetic properties of these animated transitions and the narrative content. Why can't we assume that the curiosity provoked by the strange transitions is somehow contagious and stimulates our interest in the main content of the plot at the same time? Especially because the way these transitions are proposed in itself make us wonder if it has any relation to the mental state of the protagonists. Finally, surprise is a powerful resource with cognitive effects, well described by cognitive psychology. The result of a surprising event in the mind of a viewer can be one of the major stimuli that lead him or her to review the story again globally and for deciphering its meaning. That process of rumination on meaning is one of the clearest symptoms of cognitive gain that any narrative offers. Here, again, artistry plays a role. The originality of the orchestration of the surprise is an aesthetic quality which may influence in making the plot twist more or less predictable and therefore be decisive in the cognitive effect of the whole device.